Today, we're going to explore a truly hidden connection in history. It's a kind of golden link, you could say, between this incredibly vibrant Islamic civilization and a Europe that was, well, still trying to find its way. Let's get right into it. Okay, I want you to picture the world back in the 10th century. First, let's look at Cordova, in the heart of Islamic Spain. It's an absolute metropolis. We're talking streets that are paved and brilliantly lit. Water is flowing everywhere through these amazing aqueducts. Now, let's jump over to London. It's described as being in inky darkness. People are living in simple wooden hovels. And paved streets? Yeah, those are still about 400 years in the future. I mean, that contrast is just staggering, right? You have one world that is absolutely thriving in a golden age, and another that's not. So it begs the question, what on earth created such a massive difference? And how did that gap finally close? To really get a handle on just how huge this divide was, we need to look beyond just the buildings and the streets. We have to look at the very currency of civilization itself, knowledge. So let's just start with books. In Cordova, the library of just one ruler, al-Hakem II, had 600,000 volumes. I mean, just stop and think about that for a second. 600,000 handwritten manuscripts. And what about in Europe? Well, centuries later, the entire Royal Library of France held a mere 900 volumes, and most of those were religious texts. See, this isn't just about a number. It points to a totally different relationship with learning and with knowledge itself. You know, the historian Stanley Lanepool put it pretty bluntly. When you compare Saxon life in their wooden hovels to the extraordinary civilization of the Moors in Spain, you start to see the gap. So what was the engine behind this incredible intellectual explosion? Where did all this knowledge even come from? A huge piece of the answer, maybe the biggest piece, lies hundreds and hundreds of miles away to the east, in one single, incredible institution in Baghdad. It was called the Beit al-Hikmah, or the House of Wisdom. This place, founded way back in the early 9th century, was so much more than just a library. Think of it as an academy, a translation center, and a magnet for the greatest minds on the planet, all coming to Baghdad to share ideas and create something new. You can really break down the power of the House of Wisdom into 3 key jobs. First, it was a library, saving ancient texts from being lost forever. Second, it was an academy, a place for brand new original research. And maybe most important of all, it was a translation center, a sort of global clearinghouse for human knowledge. And when I say global, I mean it. The scholars there took Greek philosophy from people like Aristotle and Plato, they took scientific knowledge from Persia, mathematical breakthroughs from India, and they translated all of it into one common language, Arabic. This created a shared intellectual bedrock that spanned entire cultures. But here's the thing, the House of Wisdom wasn't just a museum for old ideas. It was a factory for new ones. And let's look at probably the most famous example of that. So before this time, a lot of the world's best mathematical thinking, especially from the Greeks, was all tied up in geometry. If you wanted to solve a quadratic equation, for example, you might have to describe it by applying a parallelogram to a straight line. It worked, sure, but it was also super clunky. And then along comes this scholar at the House of Wisdom, a man named al-Khwarizmi. He dives into all this preserved knowledge from Greek and Indian sources, and he creates something totally revolutionary. He develops a whole new systematic way of solving these equations. And here's where it gets really cool. The title of his book? Kitab al-Jabr. That's where we get our word algebra. And the word algorithm? You guessed it. It's a Latin version of his own name, al-Khwarizmi. An entire branch of modern math was literally born right there. So you have this incredible engine of discovery humming along in Baghdad. The big question is, how did these world-changing ideas travel across entire continents and eventually end up in a place like London? Well, in the early 12th century, a trailblazing English scholar named Adelard of Bath was just fed up with the state of learning back home. So he decided to go straight to the source. He spent 7 years traveling and studying in the great centers of Islamic learning. Adelard felt like he had this unique consolation for the problems he saw in Europe. His passion for what he called Arab studies. People like him became the living, breathing bridges that carried all this advanced knowledge back west. You can actually trace the whole journey so clearly. It all starts with that engine in 9th century Baghdad. A century later, it's powering these brilliant cities like Cordova. Then, by the 12th century, you have European scholars like Abelard making the trip east to learn. And that transmission of knowledge becomes a key ingredient for Europe's own intellectual awakening. So, what's the big takeaway here? What does this all mean for how we think about our own history? Well, it kind of suggests we might be missing a really important piece of the puzzle. You see, the ideas that flowed from places like the House of Wisdom, they weren't some minor footnote in the story. They were a direct, essential catalyst. This knowledge didn't just preserve the wisdom of the ancient world, it added to it, creating the very intellectual fuel that would help spark the European Renaissance. And that just makes you wonder, doesn't it? If a connection this important, this vital, was overlooked for so long, what other golden links from our shared past are still out there, just buried, waiting for us to find them?